You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. The past month has been especially difficult at City Hall. On July the 11th, to the obvious joy of the mayor and other city leaders, the National Urban League agreed to hold its annual convention in Cincinnati next summer. But then, the very next day, the police department announced the suspension of Assistant Chief Ron Twitty, the highest-ranking African-American on the force. Protesters took to the street. A few days later, the Urban League reversed itself, and it quickly felt like little had changed. What have we learned from this so far? Where do we go from here? And what about a whole host of other issues facing the city? For some insight into those and other questions, I am joined this morning by Cincinnati Mayor Charlie Luken. Charlie, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Good morning, Dan.
Where do we stand on the Twitty situation?
The prosecutors convened a grand jury. I have said and repeat this morning that I was very displeased about the way it happened, the process around it, and wish it wouldn't have happened that way, and understand why people who are fans of Colonel Twitty's, as I am, would be upset by the process. Having said that, Dan, once it gets in the criminal justice system, as you know, there's really not a whole lot I can do about it. We have been very meticulous in this town for decades that politicians don't get involved in criminal prosecutions, and that's where we are. So we're going to have to wait, let the process work out. My own view, and my own hope and expectation is that Ron Twitty will be vindicated. He will come back. I expect that to happen, and I can't wait for it to happen.
That's your expectation based on what you've seen about the case?
It's based on what I know about the man. I haven't heard that much about the criminal investigation. This is a guy that served 29 years for the city. This is a guy that during the riots I talk to all the time. This is a guy that in terms of police-community relations is about as good as it gets, so I'm looking forward to his return.
There was a letter to the editor in the Inquirer, I guess this was on Thursday, by Michael Hines.
I never read that, by the way. So
well, I always start with the letters to the editor. Michael Hines from Covedale, who said that Colonel Twitty's attorney had mentioned that the $900 incident was insignificant. And he then goes on to say he thinks it is significant. He said, this would be a good question for the mayor, for Mayor Luken. So I'll ask you, is it insignificant?
I think what it is at issue, and what Chief Tom Stryker has been very clear about, is that it's a new day in the police department in terms of honesty. And we've seen that with Officer Roach and other investigations that are ongoing in the Cincinnati Police Division. We've seen it in the Mount Airy case, in the Madonna's case. There's this new emphasis on honesty and forthrightness. So I think it's a big deal. I think the allegation's a big deal. I have no problem with investigating the allegation. Everybody's entitled to presumption of innocence, and I presume Ron Twitty is innocent.
You say you're unhappy with the way it happened because you weren't fully, as I understand it, you didn't feel you were informed early enough. Maybe the city manager wasn't informed early enough.
And I'm not blaming anybody but me, okay? I mean, I'm just saying that you shouldn't suspend a guy like Ron Twitty without doing what our collaborative envisions. That is, talking to people in the community, explaining to them what's going to happen, why it's going to happen, get input from them, and working this a little bit in the community. Instead, I get a call, I'm out of town, I get a call that this is going to happen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And when did you get that call?
At 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out of town. I'm thinking, incorrectly, that there's a whole lot more to this than so far I've seen. And I would have just preferred to do on Friday and Thursday what I did on Saturday and Sunday, which is call a number of people in the community who want to know what's going on. And so I wish I could have done that beforehand.
Now that this has happened, you wish it had happened differently. Have you and the city manager sat down and said, in these sorts of critical situations, we're going to have a new policy, a new way that this is going to be reviewed? Dan,
the city manager said so at that press conference. She said she's going to review the press conference, how it happened. She's going to review the communication. What disturbs me is a rush to criticize the city manager in some corners of our city. I mean, this woman has come on the scene and worked to change everything about the way we do things, to modernize, to move us forward. You know, and there's a perceived stumble, and boy, everybody can't wait to take their shot. And I'm not here to defend Valerie Lemmy. She's better at that than I could ever be, but it does concern me that people couldn't kind of wait to jump her and get on her.
Some
about
people
this.
said when this happened, okay, the honeymoon's over. It's back to treating city managers the way we've always treated city managers.
Well, we've treated city managers pretty well in this city, and I think that if people want to say that she should have handled this differently or I should have handled this differently, in her case, I think she's entitled to make a mistake or two. She makes 100 decisions a day.
What difference did it make, should it make, for this type of thing in the future, that we now have this stronger mayor system? And you and I know, we've talked about this, not strong
Dan,
mayor.
we didn't change everything about the way the
Absolutely.
system works. The police chief still doesn't work for the mayor, like is the case in Columbus and Indianapolis and a lot of other places. So we didn't really change that part of the system. But what we did change, I think, is that these things should be filtered at least through the mayor into the community. And that didn't happen here. That's not a mortal sin, but it is something that we are working very hard to correct and should correct. We made a mistake, and I've been very open about that.
You said you didn't want to point fingers, and I understand that. And Valerie Lemmy, did Stryker make a mistake here? Did he move too precipitously on his own? It sounds to me like he sort of informed the city manager and you what he was going to do anyway.
And what he had done. I mean, by the time he went to the city manager, as I understand it, he had already made a referral of the case to the sheriff. He had already consulted with a city prosecutor who told him to do that. And I just don't think those decisions should be made in that fashion. I am a fan, as you know, of Chief Stryker and remain so. So I think we've all got a little culpability here. But I don't know that any of it would have affected what is happening now. In other words, I don't know that any of it would have affected what is happening in this criminal prosecution today.
Okay. Because it still might have had to happen.
Yeah, because that's about process.
Okay.
And then you get into the investigation. And I'm not sure that Ron Twitty's fans would have been any happier had the process been a little more inclusive.
Okay, let's take a look at some other specific issues that are out there. One of the things in the last, couple of weeks, you have criticized Metro, the bus system, for using what you say are tax monies for promoting their Metro Moves plan, which may lead to an operating levy, a countywide operating levy. And in effect, you said the Metro Moves plan is a precursor to a campaign, as I understand it. Am I characterizing that right, and is that a fair criticism?
That's what I said, and that's a fact. Clearly, if you look at this $300,000 ad campaign being paid for by tax dollars, and the city of Cincinnati is the only local source of tax money for SORTA. It is a promotion to tell people about light rail, about suburban routes, about all the things that Metro envisions going to the voters and asking for them to pay for with a levy. That, to me, is in the nature of a campaign and should be paid for by private fundraising.
This Metro Moves, although we're in a stage now, this has really been going on for over a year. Is there any distinction between public education and campaign?
I think there is. I think that when the public education is envisioned, it's to tell people what routes they have, how Metro helps the environment, what things Metro can do to make their lives easier. I don't think it's to tell them a lot of facts. If you look at those commercials that are running on TV, and you think about what a commercial would look like if you were running a campaign, they're exactly the same. The only difference would be they'd run a little tab at the bottom that says vote for issue 4 or whatever the number might be. So I think it's clearly a political campaign. That doesn't go to the merits of what Metro is trying to do.
Well, let's talk about the merits. What do you think of the merits of the Metro Moves plan?
I do not think light rail is in the best interest of this community, and I've reviewed what's happened in other cities and the cost of it and the benefits of it. I think some improvement of bus routes in the city, including some suburb to suburb, is a good idea. I would very much like to get the 0.3% off of the city's income tax and let this be a regionally funded transit system, as every other metro system in Ohio is. Every other one.
Let's be clear. What you're saying is you favor a countywide funding system.
Correct.
Which we've never had, and that's what's different.
Correct.
But you have a slightly different take on that than Metro does, though, right?
Well, I think Metro would like to keep the 0.3 or some portion of it and add a 0.5 cent sales tax. That's one of the proposals. I am not going to be supportive of a levy that does not do something about the 0.3%. And it's not that I want to get that 0.3% and spend it. I want the city's income tax rate to go under 2. I'd like it to be 1.819, and I think that would be great symbolically for a city like Cincinnati.
Another issue, where do we stand on Convention Center?
We're moving quickly. One of your competitors has received an offer to buy.
I wonder what's Channel 9?
Yeah, Channel 9 has received an offer to purchase. We're waiting on Delta. We expect that any moment, an announcement about what their participation will be. We don't think it'll be 30, but we're hopeful it'll be something in the 20 range.
What do you need it to, yeah, okay. You need
something
it to be
in the 20
20s.
range.
Okay.
And we're on track. The only distressing part of this expansion to me is that we have to take the hotel motel tax to 15.5, 16. Hotel motels in Cincinnati, not only downtown but in the region, have struggled. We don't want to put them at a competitive disadvantage. They seem on board with this as a way to boost their business, and we are.
What's it take
moving.
to actually change that rate? Does City Council have?
City Council can now do it, or county commissioners can do it, Dan, because they have been enabled to do it by the state, and that was that whole tiff we had with the state legislature.
But it hasn't actually happened yet.
It has not happened.
Will the city request at some point that the county commissioners do that?
Now, I'm not real clear. I don't know everything, unfortunately. Part of it has to be done by the county. Part of it has to, and I don't know the exact numbers. But yes, we will do it together. The commissioners have indicated they're supportive of this, although we have this northern suburb issue, which we'll fight another day.
Okay. Another topic.
Here.
Downtown Cincinnati, Inc., DCI. The director of that, the president of that, Rick Riley, has left. There's a review going on. What do you think should happen? What do you think should happen?
I think that the Chamber of Commerce, the folks involved with downtown Cincinnati, the Convention and Visitors Bureau should all reassess what they do, how they overlap, and we should figure out a way to coordinate this a lot better. This is going to sound strange, but I'm optimistic about some of the things I'm seeing downtown. The Power Building is open, the Krippendorf, they're renting up fairly strongly compared to other new products in the market. And you know how I feel about residents downtown. So I'm optimistic about that all coming together, and I think we're, despite what the papers say, I think Cincinnati's moving in a very good direction.
Do you think DCI should end up in the Port Authority?
Well, the Port Authority is one of those agencies that has to coordinate with DCI. I don't know how it's going to look, but you take DCI, the Port Authority, the Chamber, and you get them together so they're operating on the same page.
Are you playing a role in that, or are you just letting them do it?
I'm involved in it.
Okay.
I'm involved in it.
Okay, Charlie, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dan.
Covered a lot of territory. Stay tuned. Since the public library announced the closing of 5 branches, community groups have let their displeasure be known. After the break, representatives of 2 of the impacted communities and what they're planning on doing next.
You need to walk our streets. You need to see these kids who ride their bikes up to the library. You need to see the older people who can't walk or drive 4 miles to the North Central branch. And you're completely out of touch. Your biggest concern is that you don't have your statistics in front of you. Well, make a copy, and you work for us. So you come to our branches. You seem to be completely out of touch.
The 75 people who packed the Tower Room at Downtown Library last Monday seem to have 2 primary messages for the library board. First, you're out of touch, and second, look to the public as a resource, not as an enemy.
I think you underestimate the public.
That's right.
We were at the public meeting in Deer Park, and there were suggestions made, and all you have to do is come and listen.
Welcome back. Several weeks ago, I was joined by Kim Fender, the Executive Director of the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, to discuss the announced closings of the library branches. Since that time, the library has rescinded its closing of the 5 small branch libraries and is in the process of scheduling community meetings to discuss alternatives for the closing, for those closings and the $4.3 million budget shortfall that the library system faces due to the drop in statewide tax revenues. To get a perspective of the two of the impacted communities, I am joined this morning by Chris Hedger, a member of the Deer Park City Council. Chris represents the 4th Ward, and Ross Bittner, the mayor of the city of Mount Healthy. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
For both of you.
Thank you.
It's been a couple of weeks now that you've had a chance in your communities to sort of absorb and deal with. What is it at this point that you want the library board to do? Chris?
Well, it's pretty obvious. I think everybody wants the libraries to stay open, and I think that includes the library board. But at this point, they've been kind enough to give us some public hearings, and up until now, everybody's been basically shouting and telling people, look, you know, we want them open, these are our reasons why, and that's great, and I think everybody's in agreement on that. But now we need to get to solutions. We need to get down to, when we come to these meetings, people need to come to the table with solutions and ideas so that the library board will consider keeping them open.
Okay, and we'll try to talk about some of those things that are emerging. In fact, last night, we're taping this on Friday morning, even though it's being seen on Sunday. Last night in Mount Healthy, on Thursday night, there was a meeting of some people in Mount Healthy to try to strategize about this. What's the mood right now in Mount Healthy? What's the attitude?
Well, I think we still have some anger. It started out as shock. They were just shocked that the library was going to close these libraries. That's moved to anger and now determination to fight those closings. As Chris has said, we've been given a stay, so to speak, and now we're determined to put our efforts towards finding a solution along with our representatives, state, local, and working with the library board. You know, I don't know what those solutions are yet. Everybody's working on it and trying to come up with ideas and some way to finance the library through these times.
As both of you have raised the need to now begin looking for solutions, I want to listen to something that was said by one of the board members at Monday's meeting, and then that leads into some list of things that were thrown out at that meeting. Let's take a listen to this.
But I don't think we can consider the closing of one library out of the context of this entire system. So I'd like to suggest that each one of these hearings will focus, number one, on a particular branch, but in addition to each hearing, we will also hear about other possible cost savings so that by the time we're done with this process, we will have a good feeling and understanding of the whole system, and then we face the unpalatable result of saying, okay, which ones of these will we have, where do we best save our money, which is best thing for the citizens of this community.
Specific alternatives that were mentioned but not really developed included to stop funding for the library computer system, to stop the process of building the new library in St. Bernard that would serve both St. Bernard and Elmwood Place, one of the libraries that's being closed, to stop the purchase of new books for the library, and to cut back on the number of children's librarians. All those things were sort of thrown out, and as I say, none of them were really discussed. Are these some of the things that are being talked about in Deer Park or Mount Healthy?
Well, these are some of the things. Currently, the library has $7.2 million available in capital funding for pet projects. There's different, the Trailside Nature Center, which is basically a library for the Nature Center, is one of them. They also have... Is
this to build or to operate?
To build.
The
build. Trailside Nature Center. Also with the Reading branch, they have $1.5 million set aside already to build the Reading branch. And for example, the Reading branch, they have, there's environmental implications with that. The land needs to be cleaned. I feel that the $7.2 million, that includes the Trailside Nature Center, the computers, and everything you just mentioned, they have set aside for these pet projects, should be released. And that money can be used to keep these branches, the Deer Park and other branches, open, I believe.
Ross, what sorts of concrete ideas are you developing?
Those same ideas that Chris just mentioned, some of the things that were talked about at our meeting on Thursday night was to see where the board can cut other projects like that. They even talked about, is it a possibility to raise the fees for late books? I mean, some of the fees that they have are actually a penny a day. I'm not sure that's
Gee,
designed.
that's not what I've been paying.
No.
And I
Well,
pay a
that's-
lot.
That's for certain
They're
children.
going to name a whole wing of the library after me on
That's
Wednesdays.
certain children's books and so forth, you know, and that penny a day actually raises over $1 million a year right now on late books. If they raise that to 2 cents a day, you know, that's not an exorbitant fee to pay. Other things were mentioned, like charging for a library card, which we opposed, because then that, once again, the poor communities, if you have to pay $5 for a library card, then the poor communities can't afford to have library cards, and that's not what we want. We want all the libraries to stay open, all the branches and all the communities.
One of the things that is clear here is that 96% of their funding comes from the state tax, state personal income tax, not the corporate side. They get 5.7% of that. And that's the statewide policy. There have been suggestions over the last 2 weeks by some people that, well, the local cities that are going to have closings of their libraries, maybe Mount Healthy or Deer Park or Elmwood Place, ought to kick in some money to keep those open, or that there ought to be a local levy, maybe a county-wide levy to do this. What about those two options?
Well, I think you need to be careful when you're talking about a levy. There are 5 communities that are really affected by these proposed library closings. But there are other communities that have libraries. Madeira has a nice new library, Blue Ash, other areas that have great libraries. They don't need a levy to help with their libraries. And I'm not saying that a library levy would fail, but if it did, our goose is cooked, and then the library board comes back and says, well, there, we told you, nobody wanted this funding anyways, we don't want your branches. So I think it sends the wrong message.
What about the city of Mount Healthy kicking in to keep that library open?
Well, a couple points on that. First of all, the economy has hurt the state, which has hurt the libraries. It's also hurt local governments. Our budgets are way down. We're struggling to maintain and keep our services up at their current level with the money we have. Our incomes have been decreased also. We have no money to kick in. I mean, there's no money. We're having trouble maintaining our equipment. A levy, another point on that, it's not fair to ask the 5 communities who are not the wealthier communities in Cincinnati to kick in money to keep their libraries when nobody else does. It's a countywide system. It's just not even a fair response. As far as the state or levy, I believe a levy would have a chance of passing, but we would not support a levy in any way that would not guarantee that all the branches of the library would then stay open, and that this doesn't happen next year or 2 years down the road to some other community.
What about the theory that one of the things that Kim Fender said when she was on here was that you compare the Cincinnati system to the Columbus system, total budgets are in the same ballpark, but this system is operating almost twice as many local branches as the Columbus system is. And she didn't say it in exactly these terms, so I'm putting some words in her mouth here, but there's a certain rationalization that needs to take place in Hamilton County. We're just, in theory, operating too many branches.
Well, I think that is the philosophy of the library board right now. It's to close these smaller branches and open up more regional, larger libraries that have computers and everything available. I don't necessarily think that is a good idea. For example, in Deer Park, we would be a school district without a library within the confines of our district.
And if I understand it correctly, you'd be the only school district in the county that would not have a public library.
That's what I understand also, and I just think that's unfortunate. And I think, like I said, they need to release some of these funds for their pet projects and use these funds to keep all these branches open. And then hopefully the economy will turn around and the money will come back in again.
What would this mean? I mean, concretely, if yours closed in Mount Healthy, what would it mean to Mount Healthy? And we have less than a minute right now.
Okay, I think it would be very devastating. We have 5 schools that are within walking distance of the library. They walk classrooms of children to that library. And this is kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and well, through 8th grade. And that's the age when you need to have children at the libraries. And a lot of times the parents don't take them.
Okay, we're out of time, but the first of these community meetings is on August the 27th in Mount Healthy at the high school.
High school on Adams
And the
Road.
rest of them are going to be
Yeah,
scheduled.
we're scheduling,
And these are
right.
meetings not just for the people in those communities, but for anybody
That's
in
right.
the county.
Right.
This is a
They are
county-wide concern.
public
Thank you
hearings.
very much, and we're going to continue to follow this story.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men shaping our community for the future. Have a good week. Those people are here for that meeting tonight.
Yeah.